Welcome back to part two. Right, let's talk about paint for a minute, shall we? Apologies for the noise in the background. That's the vinyl plotter working away feverishly on a load of masks. So hopefully it's not making too much noise. So back to this, yeah, paint colour. Let's talk about paint. As with most sci-fi subjects and Star Trek things, Star Trek models and that, paint is an issue. Colour matching and paint matching and what you see on screen versus how the filming model was built, and conflicting reference and all the rest of it can be a bit of a minefield, as we all know. So I was looking into the filming models for the Warbird and found out a couple of things that I didn't know before, I wasn't aware of, and actually turns out that they built two of them. The first one they made pretty quick for the return of the Romulans at the end of season 2, and Greg Jean's guys built the miniature really quick in about 3 weeks, I think, which just blows my mind. They went from a concept sketch to a fully realised filming model in less than a month. I can't believe that. Just a testament to the skill and the speed of those guys. Anyway, getting back on track. So they painted that initial one like a dark green colour and highlighted it and did the usual weathering and all the rest of it. But then shortly after that they built another one. They built a second filming model which was more of a grey sort of green base coat with the highlighting on it. And they use stock footage from both in various episodes from that point on. So you've got really conflicting sort of reference and imagery and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of debate over what colour this should be. So it also answers another question which I posed before. These nacelle details, they weren't on the original filming model, but they were on the second one. So that answers that. So since I've put these on there, on mine, I shall be painting it more to be in line with the second filming model's colour, which was, like I say, a grey green rather than a more predominant green. If you look at some reference photos, and I'll put some here now while I waffle on a little bit more about it, you can see that actually if you take a good look at that base coat, it's almost not green. It looks like a really dark neutral grey to me, with some shading and then some highlights with a very, very pale, almost light, yeah, I mean it's almost white, it looks to me. It obviously is green, slightly, there's a tint of green there, but nowhere near as green as I sort of remembering it in my mind after seeing it on screen. And I think a lot of that is to do with post-production and colour grading, and they tinted it green in the final effects images and the effects and in the shots. But yeah, the filming model is way darker grey than I imagined. So I'm going to try and replicate that. So what I've got here is my base colour green, and I'll talk about all this shading in a second. So what I've got here is my base colour grey green, which is well, you can see it in the jar there. It is just green. I bet you can't see it in there, but it is very definitely more grey than green. And that's a custom mix that I made mostly with XF53, and then I don't know, I didn't really pay much attention to how much this dark green 2 was going in XF70. I just added it and just kept adding it until it looked about right to eye. So can't tell you, but that's the two colours I used to create this green colour, this grey green. And I'm going to try XF76 as for the highlights around like the feather plating, for lack of a better word, and see how that looks, because that doesn't look a million miles off to me. Obviously you can't trust the cap, but that colour is fairly light. It might need to be brightened up a little bit with some white, but I'll do some tests and see. So that's what I'm going to go with my basic paint colours. Now let's talk about this shading. Basically what I'm going for is a very mottled finish, lots of variation in the final colours, which is exactly how the original was painted. Not a vastly complex paint job by any means, so that makes another nice change. No super specific Aztec patterns to try and recreate. So what I've done is just base coated it in primer and got rid of all the light leaks that were still left from the previous video. They're all gone now and all dealt with. And I've just gone over it in deeper areas and just here and there over the surface with matte black, just with the airbrush, just to mottle it all up. Looks a terrible mess, but if you're familiar with this process, you'll know what's going on. If not, basically what's going to happen now is I'm going to start going over this with that grey-green base coat, but I'm not going to try and obliterate it. I'm going to go over in light coats and gradually sort of blend that all down, and what that will give is, one, the illusion that these deep recesses are in shadow slightly, and also you'll get color gradients and variation underneath it, and automatically give me a lot of variation in the color and the finish of the paint job, which goes a long way to making it feel more real. And then over the top of that, obviously I'll spray the highlights, all that feather plating work with this and potentially another color, but we'll see how that goes as we get into this. So that's enough waffle from me. I'm going to start putting some paint in the airbrush and throwing some paint around, and we'll see what happens. Right, there we go. That's the base coat sorted, and you can see that pre-shading is just showing through in some spots and breaking up that color, so it looks really good. Obviously I'm going to go over with the highlighting color in a minute and further break it up, so it's looking really nice. No need to go any more complex with the paint job than that, because that's really all that the studio model had in the first place anyway. So the only thing that I probably went a little bit heavy on with the base coat is the head. You can't really tell where the pre-shading was on that. It's still there, but it's not quite as apparent as on that as on the other parts, but I'm not too worried about it. I can live with it. By the time there's all that highlighting on there anyway, it'll be fine. You won't notice. So yeah, pretty good to go. So I've done a quick test on just a piece of paper here with two potential highlight colours. Now, a few minutes ago, or a few moments ago, I said that I was probably going to use this XF76 for the highlighting, and that's this colour on the right. Now it looks alright. It's sort of a browny green colour. That's pretty acceptable. If I didn't have anything else, I would definitely go with that. But while I was sort of looking around on my paint rack, I found I'd mixed up this custom coloured green, and I can't remember why. Obviously it says J and grey, that's not the colour, it's just an empty bottle that I used. I can't remember why I mixed this colour up or what it was for, but the jar is full, so whatever it was, I didn't use it. But I thought, well, I'll just give that a go. And there you look at that. That looks pretty spot on to me. If you compare it to the reference photos, again, I'll put another one up here and another couple of photos up. And that looks really good to me. It looks really, really light, although it is still green. That matches really well, to my eye at least. It matches definitely well enough to the studio model, so I'm going to go with that. So not much else left to say other than how I'm going to tackle it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the insides first, and I won't do the outsides yet. And the reason for that is, once I've got the insides all painted, these inside surfaces, once I've got all those dealt with, I can do the final assembly and then highlight the outsides. And the reason I want to hold off highlighting it is because when I assemble the top and bottom halves, I'm going to have a seam to fill here and some touching up of the paintwork, and it's much easier to touch the paintwork up as it is now than if I start highlighting it and then I put filler over it and then paint it again with the base coat, and you know, it gets tricky. Then you get weirdness going on where you've got pre-weathered areas that then you've patched up paintwork over. So to avoid that, I'll just do the inside surfaces and maybe the head. Can't hurt to do the head as well. Obviously I won't do any back here because there's going to be a seam, This should be okay. I think there's meant to be a part line on as it is anyway, so there's nothing going to be filled there. But yeah, so that's enough waffle. I'm going to get on, start highlighting these feathered panels and just breaking up that with the highlighting even more, and I'll be back in a bit. Right, I've got that highlighting sort of feather panel shading sorted out on the inside surfaces. And I've also started opening up all those billions of windows, as you can quite easily see on camera at the minute. So, oh, if you hear the scamper of tiny feet running around, that's just my cat Willow playing outside the other side of the door. So, you might hear her, you might not. Right, so yeah, these windows, before I get into this shading, let's talk about these windows first. I thought, well, I hadn't initially planned on doing this yet. I was going to leave all the window opening up until the whole thing was all assembled, but I think having clear access to the tail and the head as separate pieces is going to make it a lot easier, and it did. So this is where these translucent parts really come into their own and start to shine. No pun intended. Well, maybe a little bit intended. But you can clearly see there how many windows I've got lit up, and that's just purely a case of using a tiny pin vise drill and just scratching the surface of the paint, just drilling through that surface of the paint, and you just rinse and repeat that 200 million times. The biggest challenge obviously is trying to keep them in straight rows and try and keep them evenly spaced, and they're never ever going to be perfect. They're not perfect on the filming model either, so but they're pretty good. There's a couple of naughty ones here and there, but in general, sort of on balance, once it's at a slight distance, you start to, they all blend into one sort of sea of lights and really starts looking pretty effective. So yeah, this shading then, as I said just previously in the other segment, I've taken care of that now on the inside surfaces. Haven't done it on the outside, so I'll cover that process once this thing is all assembled. So I'm not going to skip showing that part. It's very easy to do. It's really basic stuff, but quite effective. And it looks really good. It looks really close to the original filming model to me anyway. Certainly close enough, as I keep saying. So let's have a quick look at the head, shall we? So here's the head. Obviously the lights aren't on at the minute, but you can see just how many little pinpricks there are. There's tons of them. It's a lot. So anyway, I'll throw the switch, and there we go. Really effective. Again, the biggest challenge with this is sitting down, not going blind while you do it, and then the second biggest challenge is trying to keep them all straight and evenly spaced. Now there is a couple, again there's a few out of alignments, particularly here, and this row is not straight compared to the rest, which is a bit disappointing. I'm not that happy with it, but I'll live with it. It'll be too much work to try and fill those windows in and make them go away and then re-drill new ones, so I won't lose too much sleep over it. But yeah, so there you go. And again, just another illustration of how effective this translucent resin is. These lights are showing up as lit. Although dim, they are showing up as lit. And again, I'm in quite a brightly lit room here. And if I throw the overhead light off, focus won't like me for doing that, but still you can see how bright these lights are, and there's no light or LED anywhere near these. They're right back in here inside this cavity, but that's just how effective this translucent resin is at transmitting the light through itself. And you can even see it. I did a test, that tiny little dot there, so you can light the windows all the way back here if you wanted to. Really good stuff. Probably didn't need half the LEDs in here to do the job, to be fair, but there you go. So yeah, let's just turn that light on so the camera stops having a fit. Right, so I've done this side, haven't done this other side, so I'm going to try and catch some of this process on camera and show you what I used. it's quite up close fiddly work. I'm not sure how well I'll be able to illustrate it on camera, but I'll give it a go. I'm sure you've probably seen this sort of thing before anyway. You can literally put a window wherever you want. You know, you're not restricted in any way, shape, or form. And if I was to try and get this many windows with fiber optics, as thin as fiber optics are, eventually, you know, those bundles of strands have to go somewhere, and they do start to take up space, and they trunk together and start to build up in thickness. So I'm pretty sure there's no space to get all of that trunked inside this. If I was using the kit parts, you just couldn't get this amount of windows. And as I said, if I'm not happy with the amount of windows, I can always go and add more wherever I see fit. I can just add them after the fact. Really simple, really easy process. So yeah, good stuff, this resin. And this is where those parts really start to bring more detail and more life over the stock kit parts. So anyway, let's get over to this side, and I'll just illustrate doing a couple of rows in a few different places and show you how I went about it. So let me get reset up and see if I can find a decent angle to try and cover this, and I'll be back in a sec. So the internal LEDs are lit, although you can't see it through the paint, but they are lit. So obviously you need to make sure that that's happening, because you won't know when you're broken through the paint, you know, at risk of stating the obvious. So 3 tools you'll need. One is a tiny pin vise drill. At the moment I've got a 0.5mm drill bit in there, which is slightly oversized, but there's no way in hell it's going to pick up on camera. But actually the point on that drill is obviously slightly thinner, you know, it tapers to a point obviously, so depending on how far you go, you'll get slightly smaller or larger windows to a point. So, and you can control the pressure and change like the size of the windows as you see fit. You'll see that in a second. So yeah, drill some kind of straight edge that I've just made. This is just a bit of scrap card, no, not card, scrap plastic, some styrene sheet. Use whatever you want. You can see I've just marked it with 1mm increments, and then 2mm sort of highlight increments underneath it, just so my eyes don't go really skew diddly while I'm staring at this thing for the next few hours. Just helps you not go blind. And the last thing is a paintbrush, and this will come in handy for clearing away the debris and the paint. As you drill through it, you're gonna start making a little bit of a mess, and it will get in the way, and you don't want that stuff causing crooked windows, which it will if you don't keep on top of it. So in general, the lights are pretty much parallel to like the horizontal plane as much as possible. So obviously there are a lot of key indicators on the kit part that you can follow for that horizontal line. This is one of them. And then obviously you've got the pinstriping. It's a bit more apparent on this upgrade part, because I added that detail to punch it up a bit more in line with how it is on the filming model. But in areas where there's compound curves, like around the head here, it is going to be more tricky. Hence the reason this row wasn't straight, because I did that one first before I'd done these ones, and even these were quite tricky to get straight and true on the horizontal plane. But this one is like a mile out, and I didn't really notice it until I was moved down into these, and you know, was able to use these lines as more of an accurate sort of gauge for that. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but certainly a lot easier than trying to drill all those through the plastic and running fiber optics. So the methodology, obviously there's no chance, well, I say that, if you're a sadist, you've got every chance in recreating every single lit window position. I ain't going to do that. I'm just going to get a general feel for that using the reference, and put lights where I see that there are, and try and group them in a similar way. I'm not just going to do 5 rows of LEDs, you know, 5 by 5, and just fill this entire thing with every single lit window really evenly spaced. That would look boring. If you look at again, back at this other side, there are breakups in the pattern. You've got banks of 3 and then a gap and then 1 and then 2 and then a gap and things like that. So, and all that adds realism and life, because the idea is that there aren't windows, well, either that there aren't windows there in the first place, or the windows that are there aren't lit, and the distance you're supposed to sort of be, you know, in reality, is so far away that you can't see that there isn't a window aperture there because you're so far away. So that's what I'm going to try and recreate anyway, just try and catch that feel. So the easiest place I think to illustrate this is going to be along this flat portion up here. Just try and get some windows opened up on camera. It's going to be tricky because, you know, my hand's going to have to be over it, so you may not see any of this. Another quick note, this is the first side that I marked up and used, and you can probably see it. It's gone slightly serrated on that top edge where I've used that edge as a guide, and the drill has rubbed against it thousands of times. It's serrated that edge, so now, one, it's not straight anymore, and two, it's got grooves that if I don't get the drill bit in that groove, it's you know, the drill will skip and it'll give me really uneven windows. So I don't want to use this anymore. I could flat sand it, but I thought it'd be easier just to turn it over, cut it down so it's a bit thinner, so I can get in some of these other tighter areas without it sort of fighting me, and just remark it. So that's what I've done. So let's see if I can get this on camera. I'm going to start at the top, poke some holes, and then move down a bit, poke some more holes, move down a bit, poke some more holes. And the reason I'm going to start at the top and work my way down is so obviously I can see the windows that I've just drilled. When I'm drilling the ones below it, I can try and get the spacing kind of even. If I start at the bottom, I'm going to be covering those windows with each successive line, and I'm not going to know, one, if I'm in line with them horizontally, and two, how well spaced I am. That, you know, sort of, again, stating the obvious, but you never know. So right, this is going to be a bit of a trick, but let's see how we get on. So I'm sort of taking advantage of this raised part on the kit, this raised detail, and resting this there and butting it all the way up. So I've got pretty well horizontal line there now. I don't think you're going to be able to make this out, but basically that's all you need. See, a window. Now it's really tiny. If I get the drill bit and just press it a bit more, it just got a bit bigger, and I'll brush away the debris just in this instance and bump the camera while I'm at it. There we go, one window. Yeah, and I'll realise this is a bit of a weird angle, but sort of best I can do. So I've lined my guide back up again, and I'm just using these marks as a visual indicator. That's the second one. Third one, leave a gap. I'm not trying to hit these marks really accurately or anything like that. It's just giving me a bit of a visual guide as to how far I've moved the drill bit each time. Give it a nice big gap. And you can see I'm only doing it a handful of turns each time. I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 turns, and that's enough to break through the paint. Yeah, like 4 or 5 turns. Another gap. This is just a whole lot of finger in the lens. Right, let's just leave that there for a sec. Now you see all of that debris. That's where your brush comes in. Excuse me while I blow at the camera. And there we go. So pretty good. Again, some of these look slightly uneven in their spacing. Now you can, where you've got a smaller window, you can try and even that up a bit by applying a bit more pressure and getting a larger window, and that kind of evens them up a little bit. But sometimes, particularly in these really tight areas down in here, you want those really small windows, so you literally just give it a couple of turns and get a tiny little window in there. And there we go, that's the technique. Rinse and repeat 200 million times, go blind while you're doing it. So there we go, an absolute boatload of windows. Thousands of them, I would think. And looking really good. I managed to keep some of these rows a bit straighter on this side, although, as I mentioned on the other side, that compound curve makes it really tough. So you're only going to get so far with it. It's close enough for me. If you want to spend more time than I have and figure out a way of guiding your lines a little bit cleaner, maybe you'd like draw some pencil lines on there or something like that, then go for it. But yeah, no, that's good enough for me. I couldn't really tell in a lot of reference photos and screen grabs whether there were actually any lights in the back portion of these sort of building areas. So I'll put them there anyway, because it looked kind of weird to have this amount of lights and then nothing on the back. So I'll put them in there anyway, just in case. And the fact that I couldn't find much reference on it, you know, there's a bit of artistic license there. So I haven't put any on these little stepped areas along the back there. Again, it might benefit from that, but couldn't really see much of that going on in any of the reference. And the beauty of this resin and this technique is, in a year's time, if I find that elusive reference image, I can just go in and drill out those windows after the fact and get those windows then. You know, it doesn't all have to happen now with fibre optics. So really pleased. It looks absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I would argue that you got absolutely no chance getting that amount of windows using fibre optics, and particularly in a lot of these areas where they're right up onto the corner of the plastic. You're just never going to get fibre optic there overlapping in places like that, because you're going to have spots where the fibre can't be in two places at once. So there we go, lovely jubbly. Just a quick aside before I move forward with the assembly of all the rest of it. I remembered that I'd got these old decal files from Starship Modeler. I think Carlos Zangrando put them on there decades ago now. It was I think Arthur Pendragon, I think was his name. I think they're still available there. I don't know. I've had them saved on my hard drive for a long time and obviously never used them. But so I thought I'd print a couple of sets out and just see how they look on the engines. They look alright, yeah, they're pretty good. My printer's not the best, so there are some little fragmentations in the ink, and you can see those little sort of spots where the transparent green paint got lifted away on the inside from the resin that I used to stick the clear parts in. So yeah, not great, but I think they'll be okay. I may still yet touch over that a bit with a bit of transparent green paint on the top of it, just to see if I can fix it a bit better, or I may not. I don't know, I'll see. As I said in the other video, I think I pointed that out, if I was doing this for a commission or like a proper display piece, obviously that wouldn't fly and I'd have to fix it properly, but I'm not too worried about it this time. As I've said before, this is more a showcase for the actual parts rather than a proper full-on build of this kit. So and that's the other side. Again, you can see some more of that patching in the green, but never mind, I can live with it. So yeah, they look alright. I don't think there was anything like that on the actual filming model, but looks pretty good. It's added a little bit of detail to it, so yeah, pretty happy. So I shall move on. Right, we're starting to round the last corner and start making our way down the back straight on this build finally. It's all in one piece, and the seams are as dealt with as I'm going to deal with them. They're not like perfect by any means, but the fit of this kit is pretty bad in some pretty significant areas, so I haven't wasted too much time dealing with them. As I've said ad nauseum already in these couple of videos, this isn't a full-on proper build, it's just a showcase for these parts and a bit of a palette cleanser as well, to sort of throw something together in fairly quick fashion and not agonise over every single detail as I usually do on other projects. So I mean, technically there should be lights extending all the way back through this sort of spar, going in, you know, like the spine of the ship sort of thing, and probably down in here as well, but I haven't bothered with those. You could do those with fibre optics, no problem, but as I said, you know, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, it's all about the resin parts for this one, so I didn't bother with that. If and when I build another one of these, either under a commission, or if I want to have another crack at it like full on, I will definitely do that, and I'll take care of all of the fit issues and all of the seams and all the other little naughtiness that I haven't bothered with this time. So all that waffle over, let's get finished with the paint scheme on this back and the bottom as well. I'll concentrate on showing you how I tackle the top, and then I'll deal with the bottom sort of off camera. To do that, I'm just gonna have to set up my airbrush and get some paint in it and whatnot, so give me a few secs and I'll be back. Okay, so I think I said either in the last video or probably this one, I can't remember now, I've got this green shade of paint. Got no idea what I mixed it for, what the intention was. Obviously I didn't use it, but it's been sitting on the shelf for quite a while. It's still in good condition, so I might as well use it now. And that's what I use to do all the internal surfaces and all the shading around the head that I've already shown. So, and the tail obviously. So let's get into how I tackled it. It's very easy. I've just got to load in the airbrush now. It's quite heavily thinned. I would say at least 50% with thinner. So it's going to give me a really light build up. You know, I'm not going to be getting really opaque paint layers sprayed on this, and that's the key. We're going for that shading effect on the miniature. Now, as you'll have already noticed from the amount of reference photos I've already put up in these videos, the original has been really heavily shaded and weathered, and that's so you can see it on camera. So I'm not going for quite so heavy a shade and quite so contrasting colours, but I'm going for that feel. So anyway, it's just a case of tracing out these feathered relief lines that are moulded all over the hull there, and just touching up where I can see or where I feel it's appropriate. I'm not going to try and copy the filming model like streak for streak. That's sort of madness. I'm not going to bother doing that. I'm just going to try and capture the feel for it. So, and it's really simple. Just this, here we go. I hope you can see what's going on, but this is how I do it. So I'm not trying to, at this stage, I'm not trying to be really hyper accurate. I'm just following those lines really lightly. If I want a line to be sort of more apparent, just bring the airbrush a little bit closer to it, control your needle. And there you go, it looks terrible, right? So this is the idea. I mean, obviously as the paint dries, it's going to disappear a bit more. So where it's a little bit sharp, if I can bring it up to camera, where it's a little bit sharp, you just sort of mist over it like that. Not on camera, sorry about that. Get the idea. So I'm going to carry on doing this. Again, this looks terrible at the minute, but bear with me, it gets better. So I'm going to carry on doing this, and then I'll catch you up on sort of the next step in a few minutes. So give me a sec. Right, there we go. Looks awful. But don't worry, it'll get better. This is exactly the way I did the inside and the head, and it'll all blend together soon, don't worry. So I've just traced out like the general relief and some of the surface features, and just sort of picked them out a bit. I don't care that it's run over in these spots. If you look at the filming model, it did exactly the same thing. In the end, it'll all average out and it will look kind of natural. Well, I hope. So next step then. We need to sort of define some of these feathers so they have that sweeping sort of gradient going back, and it's dead simple. Just grab a post-it note or a bit of paper or whatever and just line it up. Right, you didn't really see that, so let's try again. There we go. See, we've got that sharp line now. Let's just do another. Let's do this little short guy there. There we go. So we're starting to get more definition in the lines now. It's starting to sort of sharpen it all up. So you just rinse and repeat all the way across the back there, and try and follow those lines. Try and follow the geometry where the lines follow, and kind of where the natural sort of airflow, for lack of a better term. Obviously, there's no air in space, but you know, where things would be passing across the hull of the ship, sort of bearing all that sort of stuff in mind. So I'm going to crack on and do some more of this and be back when I'm done. Last step then, got the base coat in the airbrush, and I'm just going to start knocking all this back, just lightly going over it, not trying to obliterate it by any means. Sorry about the compressor. Getting this in camera, not sure. How's that look? So there you go. Much more subtle, much more sort of as of a piece. You're taking away that oh my god, what have I done-ness of it all. So looks really nice and sort of ties in with the middle, which obviously you can't see, but I can. Yeah, there we go. Finito. It's up on the base now, which is one of those leftover sort of Polar Lights round 2 dome bases. I just drilled it out and put some sort of telescoping brass tube on there to fit the post, and it's a done deal. So really simple. I haven't fitted a switch to it yet, or even a jack for the power supply. So I suppose technically it's not finished, but you know, whatever. I'll get to that at some point. Not a biggie. But the ship itself is all done. The final thing that obviously needed doing was that decal on the forehead, for lack of a better term. Now that's not the kit supplied part. Obviously, if you look back on the other video, you'll know that this is the really old, like the first version of this kit, and this is the decal sheet that came with it. And that insignia is just a bit big in my opinion, so I printed these ones off, which are also included in that the free downloadable decals that I've got those engine grill details from. So, and there's actually a bit of colour on the wings there. These are obviously duplicates, but you see the green and the blue on the wings. I thought that was quite a nice touch. So yeah, I cropped those and resized them in my image software and printed them out, and well, you can tell they're quite a bit smaller. I don't know, about 30% smaller, something like that. So it looked really nice. I doubt that those colours are on the original filming model, but I quite liked it, so I went with it. I didn't put one on the tail in the end. There should be one just on the tip of the tail there, but even these resized ones were a little bit too big, so I haven't bothered. Maybe I will at some point in the future. Maybe I won't. Don't know. We'll see. So there we go. She's all finished. Really pleased. Looks really nice. I've gone for the filming model look, but I haven't been a slave to it. You know, I haven't really tried to chase it too hard. As I've kept saying throughout this whole thing, this was more about the upgrade parts and sort of showing them off and giving them a bit of a showcase. And I think they look really nice, if I do say so myself. Yeah, really gives a lot of scale to this model. So yeah, really happy. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this model. I may keep it or I might let it go. So if you're interested, give me a shout and maybe we'll talk. Perhaps I'll sell it. I haven't made my mind up yet. So, but yeah, like I say, if you're interested, give me a shout. Maybe we can sort something out. If you want to set these parts, obviously you can get them directly from me. If you go to my website, motionpictureminiatures.com, or you can get them from federationmodels.com if you're in the States, or if you're in sort of this side of the world like UK and Europe, you can get them from, again, directly from myself, or you can get them from 7View Hobbies here in the UK from Chris, who's a great guy. I'll put the links all in the description of these videos, so if you want them, go there and pick up a set, as well as anything else. I'll sell some other bits and bobs as well. So anyway, there's not much more to say about this other than thanks for following the build. Hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. It's been a nice palette cleanser, something much more simple and straightforward to what my usual projects are. This whole thing only took probably only a couple of weeks at the most. And that's been spread over a month or two. I haven't been at it like full time or anything. So yeah, really nice change of pace, and I've enjoyed it. So maybe I'll build another one day and put a little bit more effort into the bits and bobs that the kit deserves. So yeah, there we go. Nothing else left to say really. I'll put some photos of the very final shots, finished shots at the end of this video, so stick around and have a look at those, and I'll see you in the next video. So catch you in a bit.